You need to shoot, and you need to learn. There's no shortcuts, but taking lessons can save you a lot of wrong turns.
Right.
Because once you can learn to diagnose your own misses and know what's going on, you get better faster and you get frustrated less, and you can improve.
We used to have a split season, so you could shoot in December, and it was totally different, because it's even in Alabama it was cold.
Right.
And those birds were mature birds, and so they were a lot better on the plate.
Yeah, they are. And fatter. A lot of them are fat. I'll take just the breasts of the early doves, but those late fat ones, those are birds to pick. Depending on what practices you're using, water quality projects are wildlife projects.
Yep. Yes.
If you put buffer strips along streams, which is a big thing, you're going to have wildlife.
I want to thank the Filson Company for sponsoring this podcast. We wouldn't be here without them. Since 1897, Filson has outfitted woodsmen, hunters, and anglers with the best clothing and gear. I don't know if anybody remembers the Filson tin pants, which were a standard logger pant back in the old days, and ended up being used also by bird hunters and anybody who needed a completely indestructible pair of pants. Filson's archives are full of testimonials for the Mackinaw wool. The tin cloth pants helping sportsmen survive in the wild. In support of the Forest Service efforts to protect our public lands, Filson's limited edition collection of Smokey Bear products has just hit their website. And with a full selection of fishing vests and dry bags for rafting, and I use a dry bag for everything now. But Filson has you covered, and it goes from the Kenai to the Madison. Come on out and check out Filson.com for any gear you might need. That's Filson, unfailing good since 1897. Thanks again for their sponsorship. Hey, everybody, and welcome back. This is Hal Herring, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Podcast and Blast. We are still in the belly of the SHOT Show here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I was lucky to run into Phil Bourjaily, who has been at Field and Stream longer than I have by far, and is the shotgun guy for Field and Stream. And like you've just done so much with shotgunning that I'm amazed that we're going to got this chance to do this. And I mean, so Phil, tell me something about yourself. I know you're based in Iowa City, Iowa.
Right.
And tell me what you do.
I write the shotgun column for Field and Stream magazine. I do a lot of stuff for the website also. And that I'm fortunate that I've still got enough work doing those things. I've done other things for the magazine. We've had TV projects in the past and radio show and some other things like that. And it wasn't always just shotguns. I did regional work for regional reporting for a while. Done a lot of different things, but now it's pretty much my role is to write about shotguns and wing shooting and bird hunting and waterfowl hunting, things I really love to do most. Yeah, and that is your primary focus in hunting? It is. Yeah. It is. I haven't shot a deer for 10 years. I almost went this year. Mm-hmm. I hate to tell this story to people who like to deer hunt, but a friend of mine invited me to hunt on his place. He's got a heated shooting house. He's got a gator to come pick up my deer after I shoot it. And I thought, well, that'd be all right. And goose season actually closes down for about 10 days, so I wouldn't miss much hunting. And so I got my gun out, and I got some other stuff out, and then I was going to go shoot it to make sure it's still shot straight, because it's a Savage 220 slug gun. It really shoots, but I hadn't fired it in a while. And I couldn't find my staple gun.
To put your target on?
Yeah. And I was like, screw it. I went bird hunting for the rest of the week, and that was my deer. That's how... kind of how low I set the bar. It doesn't take much to deter me from deer hunting, and I kind of want to get back into it. But honestly, it's hunting birds, hunting ducks. I will stare at the sky for hours. I can't stare at a patch of woods for hours. So it's just how I am.
Yeah.
But,
I do them both. I'm equally obsessed with them. But I skulk, like I think they said of Russell Chatham, I skulk a field at all hours of day and night. But I know that we're going to talk about a lot of this, but like you have trap shooting teams that you coach. I
have coached that SCTP team, which is Scholastic Clay Target Shooting Program, for the last 10 years. I'm kind of getting out of it a little bit. I'm burned out on it a little bit because I've done it a lot. I started when my younger son was a freshman in high school, and he graduated, and I just kept on doing it because I like working with the kids. I like working with new shooters. And it started out as trap shooting only. We've had a chance to add sporting clays, which is what I really love.
I bet. Yeah, teach. I've never done that, and I've always wanted to.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. And so I'm still active in it a little bit, but I've stepped back some, and I'm working a little more with adults now, which is also a lot of fun. And it's always, anyone you teach to shoot a shotgun, because it's kind of, my dad called it a magic trick, which it sort of is. You look at the target, you point the gun at it, and it explodes. And seeing people's eyes light up when that happens the first time, and when they're not quite sure how they did it.
For sure.
It's that's really, really gratifying, as I enjoy doing that and helping people see that first target break and see the next one break too. Yeah.
And how did you come to this? I know you started at Film Stream, you said in 2000, I think, as the editor, as a columnist.
First of all, I came to hunting. My dad hunted hard when I was young, and by the time I was interested in it, which is my early 20s, he was not very interested anymore. But he did take me a couple times, and I got hooked. And I remember it was the winter of 1979. I was home from college. And it was a brutal cold winter, and I think my friends had all gone back to school, and there was really nothing to do. And he said, well, let's go pheasant hunting. And we did. And we went the first day and didn't shoot anything. Went the second day and didn't see birds. And the third day he called up a friend of his who had German short hairs. In fact, I wound up getting my first bird dog from this man. And we went out, and I remember that because we got into birds, and all three of us, my dad was an okay shot. I was terrible because I hadn't done it. And Vern, who we hunted with, is really good. All of us just missed and missed and missed and missed. And the last bird of the day, I was the only one to kill a bird that day. Last bird of the day, I think the dogs bumped it, and it was a 35-yard crossing shot, and I didn't think about it. I just put the gun up and pulled the trigger, and the bird cartwheeled into the grass, and I thought, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's wild.
I was hooked like that.
Yeah.
And that's all I wanted to do after that. And so when I started to write, which is just, I had too much time on my hands. And
was that in your 20s?
Yeah. When I started to write, my wife and I we were living in the country. We were trying to raise sheep on the family farm, not very successfully. And I had a part-time job, and she was in graduate school, and she was very supportive. But I would read outdoor magazines, and I thought, well, I can do this. These guys aren't that good. And I wrote a story. But all I wanted to write about was the outdoors, because that's what I was just, all of a sudden, I was just hooked on it. I was just eaten up by it. And so I wrote my first story over the transmitter field stream. I figured I had to write about something that nobody else wrote about. So I wrote about snipe hunting.
Cool.
Because I used to go.
A big favorite of mine. Yeah.
And my dad used to go, you could never fool me as a kid with a snipe hunt, because I know what snipe hunting is. They live in the marsh. You don't shoot them.
They make a cool noise when they first come up and straighten out. Yeah.
They do. And so I sold that story. And
the first one you ever sent?
First one I ever sent.
Damn.
And they paid me $900, which was a lot of money.
Yeah.
Until I did the math.
Yep.
Because it took me 6 months to write it. So, okay, 6 months, that means $1,800 a year. I'm having to speed up a lot.
Yeah.
And it was also a long time before I sold another one. And then I went down and started at the bottom. I started back with For a Fish Game, Game and Fish Publications, and I worked my way back up. And
did you actually send stuff to Fur Fishing Game?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and the editor there is a man named Mitch Cox. I don't know, maybe he's still doing it. He would correct everything in manuscript in red pen. And you'd send some work into them, and my work is usually pretty clean. It would come back just like covered.
Like a high school teacher? Yeah.
Covered with, and he had to do the rewrite and send it back to him. That's.
This is all on a typewriter and through the mail, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and back then, the rule, there was all these, you weren't supposed to send queries to more than one editor at once. It was considered bad form, and they'd get back to you in maybe so it'd be, you'd send a story idea to an editor, you'd wait a month, then maybe you were allowed to ask them about it. And you've been through this.
Oh, yeah,
back in those days. And so it was, and they'd finally say no, and then you send it out to somebody else.
Then it was freed up. Yeah, it was liberated to go to the next one. Yeah.
But it was a long process, and you had to hustle back then.
Yep.
I'm very fortunate now that between having work assigned to me and having a computer at home, which came along about 5 years after I started, we could afford a computer.
Yeah.
It's made it's a lot easier now.
Yeah, it is. And people talk about, like, it's probably harder to make a living, but the opportunities are more.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of a wash as to the difficulty of breaking into that business.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I don't know how someone would break in today. The people I know who are successful freelancers, most of them worked in the industry some way. They worked as PR guys, they worked as editors, and then went off on their own. And that's the smart way to do it.
Yeah. Rather than being the outsider trying to see what happens. I mean, I remember getting queries, people sending me queries. They said, "Do you think this will work?"
Yeah.
And it's stuff that there's nobody. It's been written 1,000,000 times or whatever, and it won't work. But I always tell people, well, you probably find something that will.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely there if you really, really, really want it.
Yeah.
You could probably get it.
Yeah.
But people have no idea how much you got to want it.
You have to do. And there was just a lot more. There were more magazines.
Yeah.
When I started in the 80s. So there were a lot of different places to sell work. I'm sure that there are opportunities online. I doubt they pay very well. A lot of the markets I wrote for didn't pay very well either.
Right.
But
no,
it'd be hard to do.
It would be hard to
start
do.
out just on your own like that.
And you also forget how poor you really are if that's all you're doing. You know, and sometimes in order to do it well and to be successful, that's all you can do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've had that. I mean, I lived through that for years.
Yeah, we were never, because we always had a safety net, and we had parents we could ask for money if we had to. But when my wife was a graduate student and I was a writer, we didn't have a lot. And it mattered if I shot a deer.
Yeah.
It mattered.
For sure. You ate a lot better.
We did.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to have had that experience.
Yeah.
And, we were never truly on the edge in danger of being homeless or anything, obviously, but still to value.
Hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah. To be hungry. I know. So we were talking before we turned on the recorder. Your daddy was Vance Bourjaily.
Yes.
And who I know I had to ask you, but I remembered the novel. I didn't remember the name. It's The End of My Life.
Right.
And can we talk a little bit about that? I
Sure.
just find that a fascinating story. And like you said, it's like basketball, like guitar playing, whatever. It's in the DNA.
It is.
He was a remarkable writer.
His mother was a writer. His father was a newspaper man.
Yeah.
In fact, I have his desk. It was his desk he had custom made in the 1930s.
Cool.
It's this great big Art Deco desk. It looks like an airplane wing. And he had it made big enough so he could spread out the paper, the daily paper, and as he edited it. And, I inherited his ability, and my kids are better writers than if they chose to write.
Yeah.
My older son writes really, and does it because he likes it, writes poetry and is very, very good at it. My younger son can write. Fortunately, they've both seen the glamorous life of a writer firsthand.
My son the same. I asked him recently, I said, do you think, all these TV shows on Netflix now, I was like, I know somebody that's pitching pilots, and I was like, you really could do this. Mm-hmm. And he goes, man, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. They saw it up close and they wanted something totally different.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah.
It is. It's, and I think it's nature and nurture both, but
and even though they know the situation is not great, it's very difficult to do and the money's not good and stuff like that, they do see you in action doing it.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes, experientially, it's pretty great. Like, you get to go hunting and you get to go holy smokes.
My older son, before he wanted to be an attorney from a young age, but from a really young age, he was a vet, wanted to be a veterinarian for a little while, but first job he ever said he wanted to be a UPS driver because he was just used to the UPS truck coming to our house and bringing me all this outdoor gear.
Cool stuff.
But I didn't pay for it. He thought, well, everyone must be happy to see the UPS man, because I always was.
Yeah, that's awesome. And did, when you started this, how old were you when you got in, a steady work?
Steady work. I sold that first story. It was 1985. I was 27 years old. It took me 2 years to write another one, sell another one. It would have been in the 90s, early 90s, I started selling stuff pretty steadily. And then 1995, and, Slayton White, editor at Field and Stream.
I've worked with him.
Slayton made me a project. He said, he didn't have a lot of people in the Midwest. He said, as long as you don't move to Montana like all those other writers, he said, I'll have work for you. And I can stay here. I like it here.
Yeah.
And so then I started doing regional reporting, and that's when the radio show started, and I started to get a lot of work. Then I was finally I had a part-time job. I worked at the University of Iowa's Museum of Natural History, and I quit that and pretty much wrote full time.
Right.
And at the time, my wife was home with the kids, so it was.
That's pretty great.
We didn't get by that well, but we got by on what I could make writing for a few years.
Yeah.
And
did your father live to see that?
He did.
And was he interested in that?
He did. We had our relationship as we got, later on was not great. He divorced my mom, got remarried, and some other stuff. So I feel bad that I don't think I ever really allowed him to express that pride to me, like he would have liked to,
Yeah.
like he would, but I know he was.
Yeah. Do you remember him working as a working writer?
Oh yeah. His thing, I waste time any number of ways, and I've got the internet to help me waste time. His way of wasting time was playing the trumpet. He loved jazz, and so when he'd go off to his study, and we had our farmhouse we lived in, and he had an old one-room schoolhouse is where he worked, and you'd hear the trumpet from up there when he was working
on a piece. Yeah. And so we passed this, but was he damaged from that time? He was in World War I or II?
World War II.
World War II as an ambulance driver.
He was. He idolized Ernest Hemingway, who was an ambulance driver in World War I. So he joined the American Field Service shortly after Pearl Harbor, and was actually attached to the British 8th Army. So the end of my life, that's set in North Africa, which is where he started in North Africa, and then they went on through the Italian campaign, up, through Italy, all those river crossings, wow. Yeah, and then when he got out, I don't know not exactly sure when his stint in the American Field Service ended, but then as soon as he came back home, he was drafted into the Army.
Yeah.
And we talked about this, he was training for the invasion of Japan when the war ended.
Wow.
And he was actually in the occupation army.
Yeah. So he did go ashore in Japan, right? That's that story, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, both of us were talking about that. My father, too, was a bomber pilot, and they were slated to be on the offensive into Japan when they dropped the atom bomb. And neither of me and you probably wouldn't be here.
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, that's it.
And as we were talking about earlier, I think there's probably a lot of Japanese people who wouldn't be here either.
Right.
Because it would have been, the atomic bombs were horrible, but the invasion of Japan would have been, I think, even more horrible.
Right, especially by numbers.
Yeah, numbers. And it might have still wound up with atomic bombs at the end anyway.
Yeah, It's a incredible, like the fact that we're so close to that generation and grew up with those stories,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it definitely separates you from the right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was so beyond. He wrote The End of My Life, I know. And then was he a working writer most of his life?
He wrote it. Yeah. He taught at the University of Iowa Writers Workshop, and then he taught at Arizona, and then LSU was the last place. He wrote 10 novels, I think, and a couple outdoor books. And he wrote for Esquire, did a lot of magazine writing as well. So he wrote his whole life.
Well, I ran into a guy. Do you ever know Jack Mitchell? He did the ad campaign, I think, for the Remington 870.
I remember reading his work.
The back page. Yeah. And I was lucky to meet. He was pretty old, and he helped my sister with this kind of land conservation battle on the Outer Banks. And I got to know Jack, and he was of another generation yet. He was a gunnery instructor in World War II because he was a shotgunner. And he had this thing I remember as a child. I found it and brought it to him, and he autographed it for me. And it said, if you're going to take the plane and put it out of biz, you got to shoot it where it's going to be and never where it is. And it was Jack Mitchell's.
Great.
So, and he was a very incredible shotgunner, So the marriage of y'all did the TV show, The Gun Nuts, and the Clay Target Shootout for a bit.
Yeah.
Is it incredibly stressful to be the shotgunner on a TV show? Where you're supposed to be the master?
Well, a few things about that. First of all, when you shoot targets on TV, you make them close and you make them easy because you want it to look like something.
Yeah.
So we never shot anything very far away because it's a dot. It's an aspirin tablet out there. You can't even see it on the screen. So most of the time, it focuses you. I never shot 100 straight in trap except the time I had cameras on me. and that was with a camera mounted on the gun. I just couldn't miss that day.
Yeah.
But then when you melt down, and it would always happen to me once or twice, we'd shoot the gun, my part of the gun nuts, we'd shoot over about 3 days. They'd come out to the local sporting clays place, and there would always be a time, so usually it focused me, but there would always be a time where I'd lose it. Mm-hmm. And then you can't do a thing. You just miss and miss, and then you start to feel bad because, you're wasting their time. And, and it just spirals, and
one builds on the next. One failure builds on the next.
Exactly, and you just can't, and then you can again. But that always happens to be on those. And I remember I was at SHOT Show. I wrote for a long time, and people, I guess, saw my name, but didn't know who I was till I started on TV. And then people would recognize me, and this woman came up to me at SHOT Show, and she said, "I love your show." I said, "I love your tips." She said, because I'm trying to become a better shotgunner. And she said, "You're so good." She said, "You never miss." And I said, "Well, actually, actually, I do miss, but we edit those out."
Right.
And
you wouldn't believe the mastery I could achieve with an editor. Yeah.
And I said, if you'd like, we can leave some of those misses in the future. She says, no. I said, "I like to think you're perfect."
Right.
And I realized then that, I'm not me on TV. I'm playing somebody else who's based on me on TV.
Right.
I'm playing me who never misses on TV.
Sure.
I can miss with everybody else.
Right on. Well, that was that story you're talking about of missing those roosters, on that freezing cold day.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I get it. I told you, I'm an autodidact on shotguns. Nobody ever taught me.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm pretty mediocre. Mm-hmm. That's the truth. Some days some people go, "Holy smokes, that guy can shoot."
Yeah.
But there's not going to be a consistency there. And I would love to attain some level of mastery,
Yeah.
And you need a coach, and you just need to shoot.
You need to shoot, and you need to learn. There's no shortcuts, but taking lessons can save you a lot of wrong turns.
Right.
And that's because once you can learn to diagnose your own misses and know what's going on, you get better faster, and you get frustrated less, and you can improve.
Gotcha.
I think that's really important.
So for somebody listening to this who may be like new, wanting to get into shotgunning, what's your first recommendation? A lesson is a really good way to start. Most people don't. A lot of people are self-taught, and self-taught shooters pick up a shotgun and they want to shoot it just like they've shot a BB gun or a rifle because that's what they've shot before. Right.
And that's just then you're building bad habits. Not going to
happen, yeah.
Building bad, and there's people who can shoot that way. A few years ago, I went out to the industry day at the range, and there was some special forces guys there. Because that's what comes to SHOT Show now is military guys. Yeah. Not hunters. But I was shooting with them, and they were, they'd shoot a piece of the target, next guy'd shoot a piece, another guy shoot a piece of that piece. I guarantee you they were all looking front sight because that's what they're trained to do. Yep. But they were really, really good. You can, if you shoot as much as they do, you can do it wrong and still do it right. And still pull it off. Yeah. Were they dusting them, or were they just clipping them? They were. Yeah, no, they would crush the first one, and then the guy would shoot a piece of that. And the piece that flew off, he'd shoot that piece, and another guy would shoot that piece. Yeah, they were unreal. Yeah, and they were just really good, and obviously young and good athletes and everything else. But reaction times are sweet. Yes. Yeah. So you can do it. It can't be done wrong. There's a lot of self-taught shotgunners who are great shots, but the best way, and for most of us, I'm not a great athlete. I'm an okay athlete, and lessons and practice. And would somebody go call up your local trap and skeet club? Or I'm actually trying to do this with my daughter, and I want her to get off on a foot that's where I'm not teaching her. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. Certainly, I would never want to teach my wife to shoot. I'd love more for my wife to learn to shoot, but I don't think it'd be good if I. No, the dynamic is difficult. Because we were still dating when I taught her to drive a stick shift, and our relationship survived that, but not by very much. You bet. Yeah, I hear you. But, if you can find an instructor, and there's a lot now. One of the great things about sporting clays is it has created a lot of instructors. A lot of people are trained. I'm a level 1 in SCA, National Sporting Clays Association instructor. There's a lot of them. And we're certified to teach beginners is pretty much what we do at that level. And then the higher levels can work with competitive shooters and so on. But, you find somebody like that who can teach you.
Do you have a recommendation on a beginner shotgun for?
I am a big believer in gas semi-autos for new shooters, just because recoil is a factor,
Right?
And also less recoil makes shooting more fun.
Yep.
And then, there's people who will put up with a lot to shoot if they really want to do it, and there's other people who, if a gun hits them, they'll say, "I'm going to find something else to do."
Right, sure. Yeah.
There's a woman. She worked for Caesar Guerini Siren. She coaches the college team, but she told me about when she started shooting. She lived somewhere out in the D.C. area, and she would shoot at that Prince George's County Gun Club, one of the old Winchester clubs that's now county owned. And she's very short, so the only way to make the gun fit was to they didn't have rental guns her size. She'd have to unscrew the recoil pad and shoot just with the bare, flat buttstock.
Yep, gotcha.
And she said she would drive home, like, literally bleeding.
Yeah.
And thinking about, when can I shoot again?
Yeah, she wanted it.
She wanted it, but that's not most of us.
No. Right.
So I think that picking a gun that fits you and has some recoil reduction, that it offers some recoil reduction, will just makes it more fun.
And for fitting, so I've never really understood that either. Having picked up a Western Alto Revelation that I was shooting it sticks with. It's like, it's a Mossberg 500, right. I think. Yeah. It goes bang every time, But I've never really worked on fit. And do you find somebody that can show you what fit really is?
You do. The thing about gun fit is that until you are consistent, especially in your gun mounting and your mechanics that way, you can't fit a gun precisely because you're doing something different every time. You got to be consistent. The person's got to be consistent first.
Yeah.
So what you need to find is a gun that's comfortable to shoot. Okay. A gun that's not too long. A gun that that you don't have to push your cheek down on really hard to.
Yeah.
And shoot that, and then once you've been shooting for a while, then you can start to really fine tune it.
Gotcha.
And then that does make a difference. But
at first you just find something that's comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I know when I'm bird hunting, like snap shooting, say snipe especially.
Right.
I'll miss, and I'll find that I have a bruise even on the cheek.
Right.
And I'm slapping myself in the face with a gun. I'm not doing anything right at that point. And the pain in my cheek is the I go, okay, obviously this because I love to do it.
Uh-huh.
And I'm so excited that there's actually snipe in the hole this time,
right.
Do you find mounting that's a tough one?
It is, and it takes practice.
Consistency.
It's the good thing is you can do it at home for free.
Yeah.
Once you learn how to do it right. Most people, there's two things most people want to do. Most people want to bring the gun to their shoulder first, not to their face, and then they want to squish their head down on the gun. And the other thing is most people want to be way too fast.
Uh-huh.
This is not, it's not a fast draw. And I bet even I don't know anything about gunfighters, I don't read about them, but I bet the ones that were good were slower than you'd think.
Bill Tillman talked about that. The marshal that lived to be, he was killed at 73 or something. Uh-huh. But Bill Tillman said that he put it on their belt buckle.
Uh-huh.
And, and that was his whole focus. And because I think mostly he shot high under pressure.
Sure.
And he said that I just think about the belt buckle.
Exactly. That's great advice. But you can, once you learn your gun mount, you can practice it at home. You can take an unloaded gun. You can bring it up your face. You can do it in front of a mirror if you want. You can do it with a AA flashlight stuck in the muzzle. Tighten the beam down and
gotcha.
You can see where the gun is pointed. And like Olympic shooters will do 100 gun mounts like that a night, sometimes 200. That is enough to turn your arms to jello.
Yeah.
I probably 25 is about enough. For most
Phil,
people.
What does a good mount consist of? Can you break it down a little bit?
Sure. First thing, the first move with the gun when it's down in kind of say you're starting field ready position where the gun is maybe parallel a little, muzzles up a little bit so that the dogs are safe. You got the butt is maybe just lightly under your arm, which is how most of us go into a shot. First move is with the muzzle toward the bird.
Okay.
And that does a couple things. It gets the gun it means that when the mount is complete, you'll be able to just pull the trigger. But the swing starts with moving the muzzle toward the bird, moving the gun out a little bit so that it's going to clear your jacket.
Yep.
Because if you do that part right, you don't. I know I've seen people cut their guns way down because they're used to whipping their gun straight up to their shoulder and they tangle up in their jacket. If you move that gun out first toward the bird, you'll clear your shoulder. You'll have the gun will be on its way to where it needs to be. And then you're bringing it up to your face first, and it'll get to your face and your shoulder about the same time.
Okay.
And once you do that, you can, if you're shooting a flushing bird, you can shoot right away. Sometimes if you're shooting like a longer shot and you're using a maintained lead or a pull-away system, you're going to run with the target for just an instant first and sort of stabilize everything and then shoot. But that's the classic British teaching is as soon as the gun is mounted, you can pull the trigger if you've done everything else right.
Gotcha.
And so your eyes on the target, eye on the target, head on the stock, that's 95% of shotgun shooting.
Gotcha.
We make it way too complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
right.
You do those two things, you're
on your way.
Yes.
Yeah. I watched Wayne Van Zwol one time shoot the bouncing rabbit.
Uh-huh.
And I never hit that bouncing rabbit. It didn't come close. And he powdered them.
Uh-huh.
And I meant to watch his mount. And I was like, pay attention to his mount, right?
Right.
But I was so obsessed with the fact that he was powdering this mountain rabbit that I never left the target.
Yeah, and that's, when you teach people, you need to learn not to look at the target, but to watch the shooter.
Yeah.
Everything that's going on, you can pretty much tell from the muzzle of the gun. I remember the first time I was at one of the first lessons I ever took, I went to the old Remington School in Ilion, New York, and a target came in, and I missed the first one as a pair, and I missed them both. And the instructor said, first one came in, you looked at your bead, then you got mad, and you just took your head off the gun and missed the second one. And I thought he'd read my mind.
Yeah.
And I just looked at him and said, how did you know that? And he said, it's all right there in your gun muzzle. All the gun move, the muzzle does what your eyes do, and the eyes do what you're thinking about.
Wow.
And it doesn't take very long before you can read misses and hits just by watching the shooter.
Yeah.
And once you can do that, then you can teach people. But so we were talking about how to shoot a shotgun, that stuff, not how to teach people how to shoot a shotgun.
No, but I think the two things merge pretty good because what I was talking about was like I couldn't. I was so focused on watching that thing blow up.
One of the things that he was probably doing to shoot those rabbit targets, one of the mystery misses in shotgun shooting is what they call the occluded target. You get when the target was behind your gun.
Yeah.
Your eyes, they're not looking. There's no target to see anymore. Just for that instant, they go to the gun. The gun stops because when you look at the gun, people say don't stop your swing.
Yeah.
You stop your swing by looking at the gun. That's what does it.
Okay.
Pretty much every time. So as soon as that happens, then
like looking at the barrel.
Yeah. As soon as you look at that bead to check, the gun's going to slow down or stop. It's what happens. So with those rabbit targets, the muzzle's got to be way down, lower than you think, because that's a low target. And then you can see the target. And as long as you can see it, then you can see where the gun needs to go.
Gotcha.
As soon as it gets behind the gun, or you're blocking the line of the target, then you can't see it anymore.
And bouncing rabbit, for people that never seen that, it's a clay pigeon that comes out like sideways, right? Mm-hmm. And it'll hit the ground and just really careen. You have no idea where it's going.
Right. It's a specially hardened target, so it can bounce.
Yeah.
If it bounces, shoot. That's the other rule of the rabbits. You like the ones that just hop straight up. Those are the ones we all wait for. But if you wait for it, sometimes they don't do it, and then you're caught too. And they're not as fast as they look. It's just like the difference between driving down the road with everything going by in a blur and being in an airplane, where it looks like you're moving slowly because there's nothing to see in relation to it. The rabbit's actually going slower than you think.
Yeah.
And every time it hits the ground, it's slowing down.
Yeah.
Doesn't always make it easier to hit, to know that, but that's the truth about rabbits. So it's not a target usually that takes a great big long lead. You shoot right at it, shoot just in front of it.
Gotcha.
And you break it.
When people are, like for me, sometimes I get worse in a day, for sure, of pheasant hunting. Mm-hmm. And part of that is frustration. One miss breeds failure.
It does.
And anger, like you were talking about.
It does.
How does this translate to bird hunting? like when you're on the range shooting trap or sporting clays, like is that person always a great bird shooter?
Not always.
Wing shooter?
There's a transition to make. I'm not going to pick on trap shooters here, just because the game they shoot has evolved into very much its own thing. And you shoot with a pre-mounted gun, and you're shooting a special gun, and you can get away with a lot of aiming at trap targets that you cannot with others. And as soon as I say that, I'm going to say at the same time, I've seen some trap shooters who are phenomenal upland shots, phenomenal waterfowl shots. It's, any shooting is good practice if you do it right. And but there is a transition, and part of it, I think part of it for a lot of people is being ready.
Yeah.
And I liken it when you're bird hunting. It's kind of like driving a car. You're always paying enough attention to the road. You're doing other stuff. You're listening to the radio. You're talking. You're drinking out of your big gulp. Whatever you're doing, but you're always ready.
Yeah.
So if something
that guy
happens,
slams on brakes in front of you. Yeah.
You're that much, and that's kind of how you are at a day of bird hunting. Mm-hmm. Your eyes are up; they're not down, and that way it won't always mean you won't get taken by surprise, but that helps a lot. So you're ready, and that's part of it, I think. But again, you can be a good target shooter, and the gun mount is important. You need to learn that, and you need to learn how to do it, in the field.
Yeah,
and that helps a lot too. But no, the best exhibition of field shooting I ever saw was put on by Andy Duffy, who won the U.S. National Sporting Clays champion. It's been a few years ago now, but he was my partner on the Rough Grouse Society has its national hunt, and I went up there to cover it. And because
where is that?
That's in Grand Rapids, Minnesota.
Okay,
and it takes place there every year. And because I was the Field and Stream guy, and they didn't know if I could shoot or not, and they wanted to make sure we got some birds. They made Andy my partner, and he was at the time in serious training for nationals, and I've never seen anybody shoot like that.
Well,
and it's funny. He says he's never shot like that. He'll still. That was 13 years ago, and if I saw him at shot, he'd remember every shot about that day. Because we do whenever we see him, we always relive that day, because he said he was in the zone too.
So those birds are busting out of like aspen or something.
Yeah, and he was. The grouse would take aspen. Sometimes we would shot some evergreens. I remember that because it was pretty thick, and I couldn't even see the bird. And he shot, and he said, "That one felt pretty good." And then here comes the dog with a bird back.
Wow. Yeah.
But there are most clay target shooters, and that's really for a lot of people the only way you can get good anymore.
Right.
You talk about someone who was a skeet instructor in the war. There's people who used to be able to shoot enough birds.
Yeah.
And in that back in that era to get good, and there are some people who are. Guy who's a tremendous shot is Tony Vandemore, who runs Habitat Flats, and he hunts. Well, he was a baseball player. He's a minor league baseball player, so he's got that eye-hand coordination. But he hunts he's always a good shot. But he hunts from September through April
on his own places.
On his own places.
Yeah.
And
where is that?
In Missouri, but they've got a lodge in Canada. They've got. And they got a snow goose operation they're pretty famous for. But you shoot that much, he never needs to shoot a clay target in his life, because he shoots birds every day, half the year, more than half the year. So, but for most of us, that's not the case. And that leads,
for me, it's 100% not.
And not for me either. And that leaves clay targets as the place to learn for.
Do you have a favorite game bird that you like? Have you in this job? I know you done a lot of the clays and stuff like that, but and you're at home a lot for coaching,
right?
But do you travel to hunt?
I have traveled. I like the birds around home because they're around home.
Yeah,
and it's always been a big part of it for me. Is
owl, pheasant.
Yeah, pheasants and quail too. We have some quail. This wasn't a very good year this year, but we've had pretty decent quail numbers, and by decent, I mean we'll find a covey if there's quail cover where we're pheasant hunting.
And that's Bob White's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite, and part of what appealed to me about hunting. I guess I was a locavore before being a locavore was cool.
Yeah,
so,
we were too.
Yeah, so we didn't have a choice sometimes. But so to me, to be able to go out locally, and I always think upland birds especially are important to me, both because I love to walk and I love dogs, but also because a lot of other wildlife can live in seriously altered habitats. Deer.
Yeah.
Deer can live everywhere.
Yep.
Geese can live anywhere. Waterfowl, they can't live anywhere, but if there's one or two places for them to stop over, they can concentrate. To have game birds, you need a big landscape that's healthy.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things I love about it, or treasure about it, because actually, there's fewer and fewer places like that now. But that's one of the reasons upland birds are important to me. That's just kind of a roundabout way of saying that I like thinking that where I live is a healthy landscape. Where I can go out and
well, the other thing is in the act of hunting pheasants or something, you just see so much cool stuff. I mean, this happened to me this year. I went with some guys who are doing falconry, and I had some really beautiful weather, and I had no place to put my dogs, so they had to go with me, even though they couldn't participate anyway in the falconry. So on the way home, I found this piece of block management, which is our private land access program, and I hiked in there, and it was unbelievable. It was hawthorn. There was cattails in the bottom with this weird spring seep. There was cattle in there, and the cattle hadn't really heard it. It was just an unbelievable habitat. Rose hips, and we got birds. So it was so good that I thought for a minute, this can't be actually legally accessible, So, and I hiked back to the truck and looked at the BMA and filled out the other form and put it in there. Yeah. And there was so much happening in there, Phil. Every kind of bird, not just pheasants. It was just everything was living in there.
Yeah, you like to see that.
And you felt like it was like Eden. And it really wasn't. It wasn't that spectacular like you from the road,
right?
But it was. It didn't have to be. Hey! This is Hal Herring, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Podcast and Blast. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. They asked me to call out for membership, looking for new members, looking for people that want to join up, have a good time, and fight for America's public lands. This is a good time to do it. It's $35 a year. For that, you get a $25 T-shirt. You can check that out, backcountryhunters.org/BHA podcast. Backcountryhunters.org/BHA podcast will show you what we got, what we're offering. And part of that is beyond the T-shirt, you get a subscription to Backcountry Journal, which is one of the better magazines coming out on hunting and fishing on public lands in America right now. It's beautiful writing, beautiful photos. And partially also you can see that membership at BHA is part of a powerful movement that's necessary, but it's also part of having a really good time with people like mine. Go to backcountryhunters.org/BHA podcast. Check it out and join us if you can. We're going to have a good time, and we have been having a good time, and we're going to have a lot more of it. Come on in. My son kind of gave up on bird hunting with me. He loves pheasants, but on sharptails, because in his life they've declined in my area. And some of that's loss of CRP. Some of it is people farm the hell out of the tops and put the cows in the coulees. And that only took a couple of years to where you could see that impact on the snowberry and all that stuff. And his life was walking all day to put up half a dozen birds. And he just said, I'm not that interested in that. Yeah. Which is sad. Yeah. But we had it and we could get it back. And part of this is this huge weather events that we're having. Do y'all see that in Iowa too? Oh, yeah. Our birds... they took a hit, but from 2008 to 2012, we had bad winters. Flooding in May. 5 bad ones in a row. It's surprising how well the birds are doing given the amount of flooding we've had. But those 5 winters, you combine, that was a perfect storm because there was that, and then there was the price of corn went up to $7, $8 a bushel. Right, through the ethanol subsidy, right? Yes, through the ethanol subsidy. And those two things together... we used to shoot 1 million pheasants a year in Iowa. Now it's maybe a couple 100,000. Damn. That's a lot less. There's more we could shoot. But nobody hunts anymore. We've lost a whole generation of hunters. Which from my own selfish perspective, it's great. I'm getting on places and shooting birds, and they've got no competition. But it's sad. Yeah. A few years ago, during that time, there used to be every small town would have a long tail feather contest. And
I never shot one that was very good until sometime in that 2008, 2012 period, I killed a bird that had a 29.5-inch tail feather, which is insane.
Yeah.
I've since shot one just like it. And I realized I had this feather. There's no place to take it. There's no contest anymore.
Right.
And it's just the places would have pancake breakfast on opening day. If you said you were going hunting, people just assumed you meant pheasant hunting.
Yeah.
And it was a whole...
Oh, it was a culture.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Right.
And it's gone.
Right.
It's gone. 2008, those bad winters started to hit, and there was the financial crisis, too, and people were abandoning bird dogs. They just take their dog out. They couldn't feed it anymore. They didn't want to hunt anymore.
Wow.
And, I wish I had... Then people are abandoning bird guns then, too. I wish I had a little more money back then than I did, because all kinds of guns would show up.
I'll bet.
Because people just got out of it, and they're not getting back into it.
Yeah.
And I guess I can see why. There's deer to hunt.
Yeah.
Which is, doesn't require owning a dog and all this other stuff that you have to do.
Yeah.
But
you're missing out on a huge part of life, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean...
No, I love it.
Yeah. What kind of dogs do you run?
I have German short hairs. I've had all short hairs and one setter.
Do they do ducks, too, at all?
No, I pick up my own ducks.
That's why I have a lab.
Yeah.
It's like a generalization, or what do you call it? Generalist dog,
sure,
you know.
And
also, I don't know how to train pointing or even any kind of those other bird dogs.
I can teach you how to train pointing dogs a lot easier than I can teach you how to shoot a shotgun.
Shoot a shotgun.
It's two things: teach them their name.
Yeah.
Take them hunting.
Gotcha.
That's it. Okay. There's more stuff you can do.
Right.
But
it's like the DNA of writing.
Yeah, it is. They've got it. This puppy I've got now, he comes from really good bloodlines. He's surprised. He naturally steadied a wing.
Yeah.
He'll just stop and watch a bird fly away.
Wow.
As if I taught him to do it, but we haven't worked on it at all.
Yeah.
See,
that's called steady to wing.
Yeah.
Because my dogs are terrible at that.
Or steady flush. But where... I'm intimidated by retrievers because there's all the blind retrieves and all this other handling stuff that bird dogs just to say, teach them their name, take them hunting. It helps. The biggest advance in, I don't like technology that much, but at the same time, I am wedded to one of those GPS collars.
Yeah.
Especially in heavy cover.
Yeah.
I know exactly where my dog is all the time.
Yeah.
And it makes the hunt a lot more relaxing.
Yeah, for sure. And do you hit them with electricity while training ever?
It's funny. I had, and it gets to the point where you don't need to do it very often. I had always been told that you do it to reinforce commands, so that your voice got some weight out there. And I'd do that, and then my dogs wouldn't. I'd run them with a collar, but I would never, go days without hitting the button.
Yeah.
And then this fall, I had a chance to hunt with my puppy's breeder. And he said, no, you're doing it all wrong. He said, when they get out there to 60 yards, hit them with a collar.
Yeah.
And pretty soon they learn that if they get too far away, there's something out there.
Yep.
And they start to look for you, and you don't say a word. You just it's a silent. It's something.
I think that's it. And I had a lab once that would go out and quarter at like 20 yards or less. And so I never learned how to do that. He just did it. And so my other dog would not do that.
Right.
And I didn't have a collar. And as to this day, I have to. In fact, I hunt the field so that it's upwind, downwind, so that he doesn't sin and overrun. And that's true. I have to circle in. And that's just a flaw in my training, right?
It's funny when I was with my first short hair. This is back during my my wife's in graduate school, and I'm a writer and I didn't have any money, and electric collars weren't very good then anyway. And they always broke. I saved up and bought one, and it was just more trouble than it was worth. And he was a dog. I got him as a year-old dog with a lot of bad habits. He was a gift from the man who took me on that first successful pheasant hunt, and he would take off after stuff, to the point where one day we're out hunting, and an airplane flew over about 500 feet, 1,000 feet up.
Yeah.
He was gone. The dog was just gone until he was this little tiny. We lived on it was a quarter section, so it was like a mile. Yeah. And I could see this little white dot against the black plowed field. He finally ran and hit a fence and had to turn and come back. And on the way back, he actually bumped a pheasant, which flew at me. And I was screaming at the dog and whistling. And I looked at this bird. I thought, wait a minute. I stepped behind a tree.
I can drag this thing.
I stepped behind a tree. It flew by. I shot it, and the dog came back just in time to point it dead at my feet. And that was, but there had to be a better way. And the collar never worked. So what I wound up doing with him, I would take him out every day on a walk around a 40-acre hayfield on the farm that we rented.
And you're carrying your shotgun?
No, this is that.
Just working dog.
Just walking the dog.
Yeah.
And he'd be fine for a while, and then he'd just take off and run the boundaries. And I started thinking, and I kind of drew it up and thought about the trigonometry of it, the algebra, whatever. And I thought, if he takes off here, and I can run across the hypotenuse really fast. When he's got this far, he's got A and B to run. I've just got C. It might work. So I wore my running shoes that next day, and he took off, and I ran as hard as I could over the hill, and I got there in time to hide in the grass. And he came by, and I jumped out, and I grabbed him by the jowls and screamed at him, and he learned a whole new respect for me, because from then on, he thought I could be anywhere.
Sure. He's like a magician.
And that solved a lot of it.
That's a great story.
You gotta be young and in shape to do that. I'm not sure I could do it today.
Right. You'd have to be real flat. Yeah. But that's a great story. There's no telling what he thought. Yeah. We drove cross country once, and I had an old cur dog that came with us, and my wife would show up in her car, and we would eat lunch or something, and he would stare. He was like, how it's like she's here, but she doesn't get in the truck with us. I don't know if they really think that, but because there she is. Like,
you don't know.
With that, do you hunt doves?
I do. I love to dove hunt.
Is Iowa good for that?
Yes, it is. We've only had a dove season for about 10 years now, maybe a little less than 10 years, because for years, and if you grow up in a state where doves are game birds, you can't understand the amount of controversy.
Right. No, I remember when this happened, and we were Alabama, Mississippi.
Yeah.
We were just like, what in the world are they talking about? This is like our main September activity.
I know.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, as soon as we got it, it's like it never happened. People just forgot about it. There's one local crank would write letters to the paper, but other than that, and so our dove hunting, the state does manage sunflower fields, which I have mixed feelings. It's a lot of effort for what turns out to be just a few days of shooting a year,
Yeah.
But my dove hunting partner and I, and he's a retired postal worker and loves to scout and he's a people person. He loves to get permission. We scout doves like they're geese or ducks, and we find them feeding in cornfields, and we've had some tremendous hunts.
I bet.
The last couple of years, it's been real wet in the fall, and I think then the harvest has been delayed, and I think it hasn't been good. But most years since we've had a season, we've had hunts in cut corn that are just. And then this is at a time when everybody else thinks dove season's over for the year.
Yeah.
And we're shooting them on through the end of October. Our season goes into November, and we've shot birds into early November.
And then they're big, too.
Yeah.
That was the other thing. It's like we used to have a split season, so you could shoot in December. And it was totally different, because it's even in Alabama, it was cold.
Right.
And those birds were mature birds. And so they were a lot better on the plate.
Yeah, they are. And fatter. A lot of them are fat. I'll take just the breasts of the early doves, but those late fat ones, those are birds to pick.
Yeah, and roast.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. And what else? You ever been to Argentina?
I have.
Oh, no doubt. I didn't know that.
I've been to Argentina once and Uruguay twice. And the way I've done it all three times has been the mixed bag hunt, which is really fun. Because you get up in the morning, you shoot some ducks, come back to the lodge.
What kind of ducks are they?
The only duck they have in common with us is the cinnamon teal.
Okay.
Everything else is...
One of my favorites.
Yeah. But they've got... And I shot a really nice one down in Argentina. And they shot few enough at that lodge that they were going to mount that one, put it on the wall. But the rosy-billed pochard is their big meat duck. It's fun. It's fun. I've been to a place where the camp limit was however many birds you could shoot with 75 shells, which after you've been doing it for a couple days, it's a lot of ducks.
Yeah.
Usually it's 20, 25 ducks. There's a lot of baiting. Baiting is legal there. It's different. You just have to look at it as this is how they do it there, and this isn't duck hunting at home. And it's
wing shooting, I guess.
I can't. I'm not going. Nothing's going to make this into hunting at home. It's funny. People talk about dove hunting. I've shot doves down there a couple times. Last place I hunted, we were back in a roost where most of the birds were unretrievable. I just quit shooting. Now it's easy for me to do because I'm a guest. I'm there on somebody else's nickel.
Yeah.
If I was paying for that, I'd have been mad. But I just I just put my gun up and drank wine and watched other people shoot birds.
Yeah, I would be uncomfortable with that. Yeah,
because and people talk about, well, you go down there and you're spoiled, and you don't ever want to hunt doves up here. No, I love a cornfield hunt up here when it's just a couple of us and it's full of birds and they're decoying. I like to hunt doves over a spinner.
Yeah, cool.
And
I've never done that. Yeah,
they love it. They'll lead them up in the right circumstances, and I find that every bit as probably more satisfying than. But don't get me wrong, I'd much rather be in Argentina than be in Iowa.
Yeah, sure, right.
The food's better, the wine's better, everything. It's a great experience. But I enjoyed the duck shooting, the perdiz hunting. It's their upland bird, and that's a fun bird.
What's that equivalent to?
Nothing we've got. It looks, it's a spotted tinamou is the bird. I believe it's.
I've never heard of this.
They're great because they live in really short cover. The walking, it's in some ways it's the ideal upland hunt. They live in very short cover, so it's easy walking. It's mostly flat down there where I've hunted them. They'll run from a dog, the way a pheasant will, so it's exciting.
Yeah, how big are they?
Like a tall, skinny quail.
Gotcha.
And usually the limit's 10 birds. And
are they in coveys?
Usually you find them in one or two. But they like to run, but they will hold enough. So it's a lot like pheasant hunting, really.
Yeah.
And that's fun. That is.
And what's the habitat there? Is it shortgrass prairie or is it farming?
It's last time we shot them, it was in pretty lightly grazed cattle pastures. But the whole that was all birds once, and now there's all kinds of introduced mammals down there. And the eucalyptus trees, I believe, which a lot of birds roost in, are not native. I may be wrong about that, but so it's an altered landscape, just like ours is. But they still have a lot of birds, and not many people hunting.
Do they have good habitat? Do they concentrate on it, or is there is there a conservation ethic down there?
I don't know. I don't know enough about it to they will poison birds if people don't come and shoot them, and it's a pretty good cash resource for them now in a lot of parts of the country, so that that there's value to the birds that way. And most of the duck hunting I've done has been either in rice fields, a lot of it, or along rivers in wetlands.
And do they have retrievers?
Yes, and they're getting better. Some places are better than others, and last place I went had really good bird dogs too, and the first place I went had terrible bird dogs. And they know what Americans want to see. Yeah, and they'll blow a duck call too to make it look like it's duck hunting. But
right, gotcha.
These ducks are coming anyway.
Yeah, gotcha. No decoys.
Sometimes. Yeah, you'll use decoys, but some of the decoys are bags of grain too.
Yeah, they're coming anyway. Yeah,
and that's okay because it's different down there, and you just you tell yourself that if you want to shoot birds like here, only more, go to Canada. And that's wonderful too.
For waterfowl.
Yeah. And upland, some upland birds too, for sharp-tails and grouse and so on. But that's much more like when we imagine duck hunting, like we've got only way better. Canada's the place to go for that.
Gotcha. Do you do that?
I have done. I've been there 8 or 10 times.
Yeah. And do you ever, I don't see you don't write a lot of hunting stuff. It's mostly shotguns. Yeah,
it's just the way my niche at the magazine has evolved. I do, I'd like to do hunting stories and get to them every once in a while, but.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever done one. I think, yes, I did. I did American Icons about the sharp-tails. But it was really a conservation story in which we go hunting.
Well, that's good. Those are the best guys. That's really, I like writing about guns, but every once in a while I get a chance to write about conservation, and that's where it's really
Well, I remember you called me to flag me on a story that was going on that had Iowa repercussions, a conservation story. And it had to do with the ethanol and the water quality and all that stuff we had been talking about. That was about 2 years ago.
It is, and that's actually, I don't know if we're going to talk about conservation or not.
Let's do that. Let's finish with all that.
Okay, sure. Where we are now is in a hopeful place because 2010, our state passed an increase in the sales tax to fund outdoor recreation.
Okay. Is that fund fishing game as well?
It was supposed to fund a lot of...
Like Missouri model?
Yeah, like the Missouri model, but there's more to this story because it's changing. But it was contingent on raising the sales tax. It would not kick in until the sales tax is raised. And, of course, in the environment we're in these days, nobody wants to raise taxes.
Mm-hmm.
But time passed.
But they still want all the good things that taxes buy.
Well, yeah, of course. But time passed, and now we had a voluntary nutrient reduction strategy in place, which is not working. Because the scale of this problem is huge. And will you explain what that is real quick? Essentially,
we talked about the Des Moines Water District in the last podcast.
There's agricultural runoff goes down the Mississippi and creates a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico it causes algae blooms, and that kills and prevents sunlight from getting to the ocean floor or whatever it does, and you've got this huge dead zone.
After it poisons the folks in Des Moines.
Well, that too. Yeah, the number of polluted rivers in my state is incredible. I think
is it Raccoon and Des Moines are both like really bad right now?
All of our waterways are bad. So the agriculture industry now sees this sales tax increase as a way to get a lot of this work paid for, a lot of this water quality work paid for on taxpayers' sales tax dime.
Yeah.
Which actually I'm kind of okay with because...
it's in any way we got to do it, we got to do it.
We have to do it.
Yeah.
And I think water quality, depending on what practices you're using, water quality projects are wildlife projects.
Yep. Yes.
If you put buffer strips along streams, which is a big thing, you're going to have wildlife.
Yep. If you don't drain wetlands, you don't have floods, but you also have wildlife.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of these, depending on what practices, how there's always details, obviously. But, but as the ratio, as this, to get it through a Republican legislature with a Republican governor, you've got to shift the priorities, and you've got to make it more about cleaning up the water and paying for some of this stuff.
And incentives, I guess.
Yeah.
Because there's I know that the Des Moines water lawsuit was thrown out of court. And the judge that threw that out said there was no precedent for suing the upstream counties and that this was a job for the legislature.
Right.
And then y'all's legislature didn't really act. Would that be right?
I believe that's right.
Yeah.
So this is an opportunity, and there's wildlife people who are or recreation people who are seeing dollars taken away from recreation projects, trails and parks, and important stuff.
Yeah.
But just do it, you know. And there's no guarantee. Once it's in place and once it's generating money, then you can fight about where the money. Same thing, there's accompanying this in the governor's plan. There's a bunch of tax reductions, income tax cuts, and so on, and there's some people who don't like that because
it's taken out of their pot.
Yeah, but you can always raise those. You can adjust that stuff later. Just get this done.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
We waited 10 years to get it done, and there's finally some incentive to do it. And maybe there's other stuff that we need desperately. Monarch, butterfly, pollinator plants, real important. But
is there anybody talking about the like a quid pro quo on the crop subsidies? I know the tariff money's different, but like. I have a friend who's working on this. It's like if you pollinator belted, you got to have incentives. I'm not talking about taking a hammer and making anybody do anything.
Right.
But you have incentives to do this so that your commodity prices could actually be more under the control of the farmer. And we did it like in the Depression where in the cotton subsidy, they plowed every third row under it until the bale price got to a certain place. Right. So I don't know why we can't do this. I mean, why we've lost our ability, and we haven't lost it. We're momentarily baffled by stuff that we solved a long time ago.
That's true. I remember thinking about that with CRP, where the price of corn would go up, and then a lot of people would go out of the program, and all of a sudden the price of corn would go back down. And
it's happened with barley where I live.
And it's like, well, you'll have that.
That's called the hand of Adam Smith.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and during CRP, honestly, I was during the great years. I loved having those places to bird hunt. there were fields where, as a taxpayer, I would look at them and think, this doesn't need to be retired. This part of this could be retired.
Yeah.
The strategic part, the important parts, the fragile parts could be retired, but the rest of it could be cropped productively.
Yeah.
And, getting back to what I was talking about being bird hunting, my favorite places to bird hunt are the places where you still have the illusion, and maybe it is an illusion, that agriculture and wildlife can coexist. Because to me, that's ideal.
Right.
Being from a farm state where all the land is private and where it's all altered.
Yeah.
That's what I like to see, is when you can hunt a cornfield with weedy edges and that kind of thing, where somebody's making money and treating the land right.
I do think that's real. I think that's a real thing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But, CRP was not like that. And all the time we had those CRP fields, at the same time, we were losing habitat that was people didn't notice, because in the crop fields, people would be out bulldozing sloughs and all this. But we had birds because there was CRP, so
gotcha.
No problem. But then that goes away, and then you start to pay for all of it.
I hadn't thought about that. And that's putting your eggs in a fragile basket.
It is.
Of government, what do you call it, like a fragile basket of somebody's intentions.
Yeah.
You got to have the government that wants it.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
But this sales tax, it is a good possibility that we'll be able to enact some of the programs that we need in a targeted way.
Cool.
Which is best for everybody. It'll take a while. It's a huge, huge undertaking.
Yeah.
And it'll take us years to get there. So I hate that it's taken 10 years to get to this point. And I hope that it goes through the legislature.
For people who might wonder, what do you think a targeted action here would be if you had that money in hand? Would it be buffers on creeks?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not a scientist.
Yeah.
But from my understanding of it, buffers and creeks do a huge amount. Wetlands, obviously.
The restoration of wetlands, to me, it's so successful so fast. I see created wetlands, by highways, and they become functioning wetlands in a matter of a couple of years.
Oh, yeah. Those, I remember back in the days of WRP, when it was first coming in, writing stories about wetland restoration, those seeds can lie dormant for 100 years.
Yep.
So it is a real build it and they'll come kind of a deal.
Yeah.
So, and I know we're talking about water quality, but again, for me, from my narrow point of view, water quality, I don't care about water quality unless there's wildlife that comes with it.
Yep.
I care about water quality, but then that's...
But the two things are they're inextricable.
They are.
Yeah.
And all of these things, and same thing with pollinator strips. If you don't have, pollinator strips are great pheasant habitat, but without pollinators, it doesn't matter if we got pheasants or not.
That's right.
We're in big trouble.
Right. I think we said this one time. It's like the lack of pheasants to hunt are going to be the least of your problems.
Yeah, exactly. So,
well, this is good, man. And so I also am very hopeful, even though I didn't know about y'all's sales tax. Yeah. But I'm hopeful because I think that when you were talking about moving this stuff through a Republican legislature into a Republican governor and all, I'm honestly... And part of this Trump presidency has brought this home to me, is that there's a huge number of people who are Republicans who also don't want to be flooded or nitrate poisoned, and they would probably like to have bird dogs and go hunting. and I really think that there's something awakening in a non-partisan way.
I hope so.
In conservation. I feel it. I hope it ain't my confirmation bias. But, you followed this a long time.
Well, yeah, I've seen it. And what happened to our birds was sad. And it happened in no time. And I remember
I felt that, too.
I always used to my wife went to college in Illinois. I used to drive back and forth through Illinois, and where the parts of that are just flat and desolate and totally farmed. I always think, I'm glad I don't live in a place like this.
Yeah, and then
I started looking around, and I started to live in a place like that.
Yeah.
I'm lucky where I live, there's still some decent bird hunting.
Yeah.
But it's not like, you used to be able to go anywhere in the state. And now you can't.
Well, I took it up, and I didn't have good dogs or anything then, but I took it up at a time where the birds were pretty high. And with a lot of CRP, and there was a lot of, it was just, the sharp tails were good. And I just thought I didn't think that would ever end.
I knew we were spoiled at the time. Because the CRP came, I started hunting, I said 79 actually. That winter, that killed a lot of birds off. That was kind of the end of the real, you talk to, I think of the 90s as the good old days, and you talk to the old guys, and they'll say, that was nothing. You should have seen the 60s and 70s, soil bank days. But from from where I saw, in the 80s, where it was pheasant populations were dropping off and deer populations were exploding. Mm-hmm. Then we got, the 90s, all of a sudden we had birds everywhere, by my standards anyway. So that's what I think of as the good old days. But and we probably won't see that again, but we can see a lot. Yeah. And we can see a lot healthier landscape, I hope.
That's what I dream of. I think the two things will go together, and I think also human beings are going to be a lot happier. There's like who's the guy that designed the like Central Park and all that stuff? The landscape architect.
I'm going to say Stanford White, and that's totally wrong because he's an architect, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And as soon as you turn off this recorder,
we'll both remember it. I was just thinking about the human perception of a healthy landscape and like different colors. Right. This winter has been so wild for me because we had these enormous blizzards and then they melted off in these huge Chinooks. Uh-huh. And the colors of the land where I live is just amazing, shocking. Uh-huh. And it's actually a lot of it's pretty healthy, and it's big prairie and stuff. And I'm telling you, it's better for your soul. There's a lot less like anxiety or something in people when there's not just that monoculture land about to be flooded and sprayed with another chemical, and then and you're just like driving through it, like existing in your life, making it through your existence. Right. So I have a dream of a very diverse landscape in the Midwest, and that's profitable for everybody.
I think it's possible. I think I don't know what it'll take to change it.
I don't either. But I think it's broken enough now where this conversation is not the only one going on.
No,
here.
No, there's people who there's some talk of listing monarch butterflies as endangered, which. That would be a can of worms.
That would be a can of worms, for sure.
and then some, but it's that bad.
And our danger in that is that somebody would just kick the endangered species to pieces. Right. And I want it done. If the hammer of federal law is the way it gets done, that's unfortunate. But, I'm good with that, too. It's like you don't need regulating if you're acting right. Right. Well, do you got any closing thoughts on shotgunning?
I'm going to have to go back to... eye on the target, head on the stock.
Right on, man.
If I wrote just a few words every year, that's what it would be. That and clean your gun.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, thanks a lot, Phil. That was great,
thank
man.
You. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, enjoy the rest of the SHOT Show if we can. I'm going to go hit it one more time.
Me too.
All right, see you, man. Hey, this has been Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Podcast and Blast. I'm Hal Herring. We're signing off for this one, but we'll be back in a week or 10 days. And meantime, check out backcountryhunters.org. Get some more podcasts there and see what we're up to. And also, I'm going to be out there wandering around hunting and fishing, wearing out a pair of boots. And I hope you'll be doing the same thing. We're living in God's pocket. We need to celebrate that. Never forget it. Get out there and live it and enjoy it. Hey, thanks a lot, everybody. Talk soon.